Mark Carney. He's got investments in all these companies that are very, sustainable, energy focused. And when you do that right, I'd say it's a good thing. But a lot of times, obviously, when the government's connected, there's money connected, people aren't always doing that right. Like this is Dr. Steve Turley. He just posted this video yesterday, professor, and he's talking about Wexit. So this is a potential exit of these two provinces, these Western provinces from Canada, because of how they're being treated by the government. And here's the ultimate, I think, end to the story is if he doesn't get his act together, right? And if the Liberal government doesn't get their act together, we may see a split in Canada. Y'all ready for this? Because I want to show what the potential downside is. And this is something that's also popped up this week. And it actually happened on June 18th, this last month. Okay, so imagine you've got Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney. He's got investments in all these companies that are very, sustainable, energy focused. And when you do that right, I'd say it's a good thing. But a lot of times, obviously, when the government's connected, there's money connected, people aren't always doing that right. Like it's not always sustainable. Sometimes it's just a workaround or whatever. Anyways, so it's not always clean energy necessarily, but there's a part of Canada that is supplying the oil, and there's a part of Canada that's basically living off of the money made off of the oil supply. So the conservative side is kind of the money-making side when it comes to the different provinces. Let's jump into this. This is, and I'm going to botch this name. So sorry to Roy Patterson and all of my Canadian friends in the chat. I'm going to say this name wrong. So sorry. Saskatchewan, maybe? I don't know. Saskatchewan, is that right? Okay, I'm so sorry.
I don't know if that's right.
That sounds right.
And Alberta, two provinces in Canada, they just met June 18th. So this is Dr. Steve Turley. He just posted this video yesterday, professor, and he's talking about Wexit. So this is a potential exit of these two provinces, these Western provinces from Canada, because of how they're being treated by the government. Ottawa is going one direction. The capital is going one direction. The left leaning government is going one direction, and they're kind of stuck in the middle, and they just have to deal with it. So June 18th, his video is very interesting. Y'all go watch the full video if you want to see the rest of it. But these two governments of these two provinces caucused together without permission from Ottawa. They said, we're going to do our own thing. We're going to caucus together and essentially as a unified political force. And they together have a population of 6 million, but they control 75% of Canada's oil production. So imagine that for a second. 6 million, but they control 75% of Canada's oil production. Alberta alone generates 14% of Canada's economic output, and Canada needs this revenue. So Alberta pays out about $250 billion to the rest of Canada essentially per year. So you know how it's kind of like a money share system. It's a little bit socialist if you think about it this way, but it's headed that direction. But that's how the government works. As states, we're all supporting the federal government right here in the United States, and some states get grants for certain things, some states get money for certain things, and so it's not always even, right? Alberta essentially paid out last year $250 billion to the rest of Canada. Quebec, on the other hand, took $13.2 billion in what they call equalization payments. Y'all are making more money than we are, so we're gonna steal your money and call it equal. Now we're equal or whatever, partners in this. But the problem is these conservative provinces, Alberta and Saskatchewan, I'm so bad at pronouncing it, I'm so sorry. These provinces are very conservative heavy, and so they're not being represented by the Liberal government. And what's happening is the Liberal government is putting all of these restrictions on their economy, their ability to make money, these different industries that are here, and yet they're taking advantage of the money that's coming out of those provinces. So they're not being represented, they're being heavily taxed in a certain sense. And so what just happened, these two provinces just met and essentially made this proclamation against the federal government saying, hey, we need you to get these things in line. And if not, they kind of hinted at moving towards secession. So 36% of Albertans want to separate. 36% polled right now. And that is without any sort of big campaign, official campaign to try to do that. 34% of Saskatchewans Also, Alberta is moving forward with an independence referendum for 2026. They are officially moving forward with that. So we're going to find out. An organization in Alberta has already collected over 250,000 signatures to secede, people that say, yes, absolutely. And there's only 6 million people in these two provinces together. That's 250,000 only in Alberta. Another signature movement has been started in the other province as well. Here's his conclusion, and then I'm going to move on to this next slide. This is what he says at the end of the video. The historical precedent is clear. And this is Dr. Steve Turley. The historical precedent is clear. Every major secession movement in modern history followed more or less a common pattern. The reigniting of regional identity that believes it's being slighted by a federal other ends up leading to a unified resistance that ultimately leads to separation. So that he's saying, man, that's what's happening here. They're being slighted by the federal government. They're being slighted by the rest of Canada, and they're saying, hey. And so I'm going to show y'all what they're actually saying here. Let me switch over to this. So this is the official statement released by the Saskatchewan.
I think if you think of it, and I could be wrong, but I think if you think of it as like emphasizing the catch, like Saskatchewan. Like,
okay, I see it now.
Saskatchewan.
Oh yeah, so much easier.
Speech pathologist here, Doug.
Thank you. I need a linguist. Yeah, I need somebody. To all my Canadian friends, I'm going to practice for next time we talk about the provinces. But this is the joint statement released on June 18th. So this is after they caucused together. They released a statement, and Premier Danielle Smith and Premier Scott Moe of these two provinces issued the following statement calling for change to federal policies. And they're essentially saying, we need this to happen, or else we might take things to the next level. Together, we call for an end to all federal interference in the development of provincial resources. And obviously, they've got a lot of resources in these provinces. They're making a lot of money for Canada. They are boosting Canada's economy. They're single-handedly probably keeping. Actually, they are. This is one of the things that Dr. Turley says. They single-handedly are keeping Canada out of the red, these provinces. So without them, they're not going to make it. And then here's what they call for. They call for the federal government to work towards fighting China's tariffs on agri-food products and the U.S.'s tariffs on steel and aluminum, which is one of the things that Carney ran on, and now he's not doing. And I know we're in the States, so there's conflict of interest or whatever there, but I'm all for Canada being in the best position they can be in as well. So whatever. And then they address specifically repealing or overhauling the Impact Assessment Act to respect provincial jurisdiction, eliminating the proposed oil and gas emissions cap, because that's hurting their economy. Well, watch this, scrapping the clean electricity regulations.
Whoa.
Abandoning the net zero vehicle mandate, and then also repealing any federal law or regulation that purports to regulate industrial carbon emissions, plastics, or the commercial free speech of energy companies. What does all that sound like? These are all the companies that would make Carney rich if they got rich, right? The richer they get, the richer he gets, and they're the companies that he's going to be supporting, and the mandates he's going to be supporting as the leader of the government. But it's hurting these provinces. And here's the ultimate, I think, end to the story is if he doesn't get his act together, right? And if the Liberal government doesn't get their act together, we may see a split in Canada. We literally may see a modern day, miracle. Some people might consider it, but also could be, a disastrous outcome. Depends on how it goes. I don't know. It could be terrible situation to get there. I don't know. I don't know if we're talking revolution. I don't know what we're talking, but I wouldn't want to guess, but this is what it says at the end. It says, we will continue to fight to deliver on the immense potential of our provinces for the benefit of the people of Saskatchewan and Alberta. So that's what they're saying. That's where they're at. They're frustrated. They're done. And Carney having these mixed agendas and mixed motivations is not helping the situation. It's only going to make it worse.
It's really severe when you think about Carney having investments in the renewables, because these two provinces, like you pointed out, they want the government to stop hurting the fossil fuel industry and artificially helping the renewables energy, right? But Carney obviously he only has reasons to support the renewable energy because he's going to make money off of that since he has investments there. So the fact that his financial situation is completely opposite of what the two conservative provinces we're talking about, what they want to happen, that doesn't sound like that bodes well. I don't know if they're really going to split off, but that definitely doesn't sound like it bodes well. Sorry, Doug, hop in.
Oh, that's cool. I was just going to ask if they were to secede, what's the suggestion there? Would it be they're their own republic, or do they have other plans? Like,
no, that was the
like a 51st state, maybe.
No, what? No,
I wasn't going to say it.
No, what Dr. Turley mentioned was the proposed plans were to create their own nation, as Alberta, and their own nation as this Saskatchewan province. Going from a province to a nation. So I don't think they'd be combining, but they are. Both of those provinces share very similar beliefs. And like.
The United States of Canada, they could technically do that if two together,
Yeah, and have two states and a nation, whatever, so it could be one nation or it could be two.
Yeah.
But that's what that was what he mentioned that they've talked about. So yeah, that's crazy to me that they are like putting pressure on the federal government and essentially saying, hey, we started this thing. We're going to talk about it next year in 2026. We're going to maybe potentially vote on it. Like y'all had better do something. Y'all had better get your act together. But
okay,
it's just incredible to me. Like this guy's got to have friends in high places to know to have that much confidence to go in with this much ridiculous financial propriety, whatever you want to call it, conflicts of interest. Like when I ran for the Iowa House of Representatives, okay, so like when like when you connect a bank account to like a card or something, it does like a deposit and then removes the deposit, like 2 cents or a cent, and then removes the deposit. I called the Iowa Ethics. I was so paranoid about it. Like I called the Iowa Ethics and I said, look, I connected Stripe or PayPal or whatever it was to this account, and do I need to report these 2 cents coming in and out? Like, do I put them as income or like what? And they're like, we've never had anybody call about this before. If it was so then they're like, basically, if it was in the same month, just forget about it or whatever. But I was still like, you don't sound very confident in that. And I don't, anyway, I was on the other end of the spectrum of, I think we should be very careful here.
Yeah, definitely. I was just saying, Roy, he said California also wants to separate from the U.S. Funny enough, I got both.
Good riddance,
angles here because I'm a Californian transplant into Texas, but California, just to clarify, from last I know of anyway, unless something's changed, which I don't think so, they didn't necessarily want to separate from the U.S. They just wanted to separate from itself. It was Northern California versus Southern California, to put it simply.
Any final short comments, and then we got to finish up because we are well over that hour mark.
One final thing I'd say is, it makes sense when you run for office. A campaign is different than being in office, and so you have maybe a different strategy for running your campaign versus being in office. But if a staple of your campaign is impossible to execute while you're in office, then you should probably have a different campaign strategy. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing here. And I've given examples in the past about people overplaying their leverage, and then it comes back to bite them. And so they need to be careful about that. It's better to run for office with integrity and just do everything with the right level of transparency and that sort of thing. If you're going to run for office, that would be the case. But I do agree. I think this is it's good to see him at least looking at the interests of the Canadians and the steel industry and protecting that. And actually, it's protecting national interests as well, because steel is quite important. And so you don't want to give that over to another country that could be hostile. So great conversation. A lot of fun facts here that you brought for us today.
Yeah, just sell your stocks while you're the prime minister, rebuy after that, and fixes the problem. Anyways, all right, great discussion. Great job, Reese.